Okay, here we go. Good evening. Hope all of you are doing well. We're going to be learning tonight Maseches Shabbos, Daf Kuf Lamed. This is the beginning of a new parak, and this is parak Rabbi Eliezer de Mila, usually referred to without the yud. People just say Rabbi Eliezer de Mila. It's not really right. Rabbi Eliezer is often a reference to the Amora, and Rabbi Eliezer was a Tana, and of course these are Mishnayos. Before we begin this Mishnah, how far does one go to fulfill a mitzvah, and at what sacrifice as it relates to the laws of Shabbos? Let's say the only way to fulfill a mitzvah on Shabbos is to violate other isurim. So by and large, we have a principle that if you're going to do a mitzvah, but you're doing it derech aveira, so that's usually not so wise. This is a big machlokas in the Tanaim here in regards to the mitzvah of bris milah. Let's get started. Top of Kuf Lamed Amud Aleph. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, a very lenient shita. Im lo hevi kli me'erev Shabbos, if the moel did not bring his knife, what he needs to do the bris before Shabbos, so the din is meviu b'Shabbos megula. You are allowed to carry it on Shabbos, but not in your pocket. You have to carry it outright. Uvisakana, in times of sakana, Rashi, Dibur Hamaschil, uvisakana, Rashi says fourth line, shegazru goyim al mila, that they forbade it. So then finishes up the Mishnah, mechasehu al pi edim, you are allowed to cover it up, but there have to be some witnesses in order to testify to the fact that you are actually hiding them for the right reasons. Says Rashi, a very important Rashi, fourth line, Dibur Hamaschil mechasehu al pi edim. Rashi says, sheyaidu sheizemel shel mitzvahu, maybe velo yachshaduhu, that what he is carrying under these witnesses, what he is carrying is in fact a knife that's used for bris milah, in order to make sure that no one is choshesh, that person, for being an avarya. We're going to get into the Gemara tonight a little bit about what that means. This is the shita of Rabbi Eliezer, and he extends his opinion to still more, not just the knife itself. But let's go back another step. You don't even have a knife yet. You forgot to prepare a knife for Shabbos. So it says Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah, Ba'od Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Korsim Eitzim Lasos Pechamin, you're allowed to cut down a tree in order to make the kol, lasos barzel, in order to make the knife itself. It's remarkable, and think in scales, right? We're not just talking about bringing the knife. We're talking about doing various other malachos, cutting wood, kotzer, right? Lighting a fire is mavir. So many averas. Rabbi Eliezer goes many scales back from the actual milah itself. Obviously, the actual chatich of the milah is based on a pasuk. That's fine, we got that. But all the preparatory stages, that Rabbi Eliezer is very mekala. Rabbi Akiva does not agree. 5 lines into the Gemara, Kuf Lamed Amud Aleph, Klal Lama Rabbi Akiva, Kol malacha she'efshar la'asos me'erev Shabbos, any malacha that could have been done before Erev Shabbos, you should do that, and if you don't, eino doches HaShabbos. You forgot to make the knife, you have to push off the bris. What are you supposed? You can't cut down a tree on Shabbos because you forgot to make the knife. Now what are you going to do? You're going to light a whole bonfire? It's too much. And umila, the bris itself, she'efshar la'asos me'erev Shabbos, that of course is going to be doches HaShabbos. Good. So that's the Mishnah. 2 shitas in 2 totally different camps. Rabbi Eliezer, way lenient in various scales away from the bris itself, is matir to do malacha d'oraisa. Masha'en came the shita of Rabbi Akiva, who says that you are only allowed to do that which you could not otherwise have done during the week. Opens the Gemara with the question: what was this whole thing in the Gemara in the Mishnah about keeping the knife uncovered, to keep it megula, to keep it revealed? It says the Gemara, Bailahu, time of Rabbi Eliezer, when Rabbi Eliezer said in our Mishnah, and Rashi highlights that this is the question, that it needs to be that it's revealed. Why does it need to be revealed? Does it need to be revealed mishum chebuve mitzvah? Does it need to be that the reason why you have to walk with the knife revealed is to show you that the Torah allowed you to do this isser for a chibuv mitzvah because you have a mitzvah d'oraisa to do bris milah? Odilma, or perhaps mishum chashada, or perhaps in order to avoid those thinking ill of you, that you look otherwise not so from on Shabbos. What would be the difference? The difference, says the Gemara, is when there's no emergency. During a regular Shabbos, there's no sakana. It's not Shas Hashmad. It's a regular Shabbos. And in the world of Rabbi Eliezer, would he allow you to do the following? La'asuye mechuse al pi edim. In a regular case, when there's no sakana, would you say that I'm allowed to carry that with edus but covered? Right? Would he say that that's allowed? If you say that be'etzem, really what we need to be doing with this particular knife when we carry it is keeping it uncovered because of chibuv mitzvah, the shoah b'shmak the mitzvah, then you can't cover it. Unless it's a sakana, you can't cover it. Megule in mechuselo. That makes sense. That approach works. If the concern that Rabbi Eliezer is saying, and the reason why you have to walk with the knife uncovered is because of chashad, then afilu mechusa shapir dami. Even if it's going to be covered up, it should be perfectly fine. Which shita do we hold like? Itmar, the Gemara answers, Amar Reb Levi, lo Amar Rabbi Eliezer, elo lechibuve mitzvah. The Gemara answers that no, it's the first approach, namely that even if you have the option, when there's no sakana, to cover it with edim, you're not allowed because it's bishum chibuve mitzvah. And that would be the distinction between these, that's the chakir the Gemara is making. Is it chibuv mitzvah or is it going to be for chashad? The Gemara answers that it's for chibuv mitzvah. Tanya namihachi, a brisa that agrees with this approach of Rab Levi. What does the brisa say? Mevio migula, ve'enu mevio mechusa, that you can only bring it when the knife is revealed. Ve'enu mevio mechusa, and you're not allowed to bring it when it's covered. But haraya, we hold chibuv mitzvah because if you would have said that mechusa al pi edim is allowed, that you are allowed to cover it, but with two edim testifying that what you're doing is reasonable, so then it should have been matir. But this brisa says not that way. But haraya, Levi's right, that it is only, the knife can only be brought megule and not mechusa. Amar Ravashi mas nisanami deka. We could even have made the same inference from our very first Mishnah here on the top of Kuf Lamed Amud Aleph. What does our Mishnah say? The katani uvishasa sakana keywords mechaseu al pi edim. When is it that you're allowed to use the witnesses to allow you to carry the knife covered? That's only true when it's bisakana. And the Gemara makes the diuk explicitly. Bisakana in, shelo bisakana lo. When can you rely on edim to say that you are allowed to cover the knife? That's only true when it's a sakana. But when it's not a sakana, you're not allowed. Shma mina mishum chibuve mitzvah, shma mina. So even if we took this by extrapolation, when you're doing an aveira on Shabbos that is mutter, an aveira that's mutter, then you have no reason to hide it. None at all. It's a mitzvah, just like bris milah. You're allowed to walk with the izemel in your hand well above your head, no problem. People know you're doing it l'shem mitzvah. It's because of chibuv mitzvah. You're not even allowed to cover it according to Rabbi Eliezer. Now, we don't pass him this way at all. You can't carry the knife on Shabbos. That's not how we pass him. We pass him like Rabbi Akiva. Let's continue. We are about a third of the way down, 2 lines before the wider lines, Kuf Lamed Amud Aleph Tanya. The brisa reads, Tanya Idach, another brisa reads, Mevio megula ve'ein mevio mechuseh, similar theme, Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, just like we would have assumed. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. No again. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. No again hayu b'shasa sakana during the times of sakana shahayu mevian mechusa al pi edim. Just like our Mishnah. So another brisa that supports our Mishnah, very very perfectly aligned. Asks the Gemara, Ibaya lehu. You said that there needs to be edim. Edim de ka'amar ihu v'chad. Is it the moel plus one other person? O dilma hu v'trei. Or is it the moel plus 2? What does edus look like here? Can I be one of the edim? I'm a moel. Can I be one of the edim if I forget my knife that I can now carry? Where can I carry it? Just Rabbi Carmelis, we're going to discuss some of that. Where can I carry it? So which way? Is it me plus 2 edim or is it me plus one other? Says the Gemara, Tashma, let's look in the Mishnah. Uvisakana mechasehu al pi edim. He can cover it with plural edim. Says the Gemara, I understand the language of the Mishnah if you say that it's the moel plus 2 other people. If you say it's just the moel and one other, so then why does the Mishnah say plural? My edim. It should have been singular. Al pi aid, because I'm one guy and you're the other guy. That should have been sufficient. V'haraya, this is the Gemara's question. Maybe we should assume, therefore, that it's only me and one other person. So says the Gemara, the Gemara says, my edim, what's plural? Answers the Gemara, no. I could have argued that it is still hu v'chad, just the moel plus one other. Any of these 2 people who would have otherwise been reasonable to be edim elsewhere, conceptually, that they could have been edim elsewhere, then we would have said sufficient. And therefore the Gemara concludes, hu ve'edecha, just me, the moel, and one other person, that would be sufficient edus. Basically, you just have to bring one other person. Take a look at Rashi here, an important Rashi, 2 inches above where we are. Halfway down in the Rashi's Dibur Hamaschil. Sheru'uyim lahai b'makom acher, says Rashi, la'olam hacha, edus lo shaycha de la'afuke michashada. All we're doing here is getting rid of chashad be'almahu. Ve'ein kan lo dine mamanis v'lo dine nefashos yu shnayim. Umay karulahu edim te'ika gilui milsa al yadei hasheni. This is not regular edus. It's a gilui milsa. It's not regular edus. Maybe they can even be related to each other. Maybe it's not the same kind of edus we're typically used to. But the Gemara is saying here is that it can even be hu v'chad, just the moel and one other person. This brings us to the 2 dots, almost halfway down. Let's continue. The Od Amar Rabbi Eliezer, we said that Rabbi Eliezer said you can even scale back to previous stages, cutting wood and then lighting it to make a fire in order to craft and to mold the knife. Tanu Rabbanon, Rabbi Eliezer, where Rabbi Eliezer lived, you were allowed to cut wood in order to make coals, in order to make the knife on Shabbos for bris milah. And unrelated, but similar in concept, B'mekomo shel Rabbi Yossi Aglili, hayu ochlen basar of b'chalav. Well-known Gemara. Yossi Aglili was of the opinion that you were allowed to eat chicken with milk. Midoraisa, that's taka true. And he held that way, lemaisa. Levi ikla lebei Yosef Rishba. Levi went to the home of Yosef Rishba. Rashi says that the word Rishba is a reference to Tzayade Ophos. He would capture birds. He was a bird catcher. So fine, that's where Levi went. Krivu le reshe de tavsa bechalva. They brought him a very unique dish. It was the head of a peacock in milk. Lo achal. And he refused to eat it. So would we all have refused to eat it. Ki asa lakame de Rebbe. He brought this back to Rebbe. Amar le. Rebbe said to him, I don't understand, Levi. Amai lo tishmatinhu. Why didn't you put this guy in Chayrim? He's mamish serving you basar b'chalav derabbanan. He just gave you milk and chicken. What is that? That's not allowed. Omar Levi said back to Rebbe, no. It was Asrei Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Haba. This was in the locale where Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira was in charge. The Amina, I thought, Dilma Darash Lehu Rabbi Yossi Aglili. I thought that maybe he paskin like Rabbi Yossi Aglili, who held that there's no isser of chicken with milk. What are the Marim Mekomos? For that does not. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer, Ne'emar, the pasuk says in one place, Lo sochlu kol nevela, you cannot eat any animal that's a nevela. The Ne'emar, Lo sivashel gili b'chalevi mo. And another pasuk that doesn't allow a mother, an animal to be cooked in its mother's milk. Es she'asir mishum nevela, asir mishum levashel b'chalav. That which is asir because of nevela also can't be cooked in milk. I would have thought, Havamina, Of she'asir mishum nevela. Of also has a din of nevela under certain circumstances. Yachol yehei asir levashel b'chalav. Maybe, says Rabbi Yossi Aglili, you might have been concerned that you're not allowed to cook chicken with milk. Says the Gemara, Talmud Lomar b'chalav imo. Only when it's chalav imo. Yatza of she'ein lo chalav ein. These are not mammals. The mother of the chicken doesn't nurse. There's no milk. And because Rabbi Yosef Aglili has a lumdus, it's not a kula, it's a lumdus in psukim. He says that because chickens are not mammals, because they don't nurse, so therefore there's no din of being cooked in milk. They're totally distinct foods. So we would have made a balabatish chakira. Is chicken like fish or is chicken like meat? That's what we would have said in simplistic terms. These are psukim mamish. Rabbi Yossi Aglili, that's where he was coming from. So that's what Levi said back to Rebbe. Rebbe said, why don't you put him in chayrim? And he answered, because Rabbi Yossi Aglili has real marim komos. It's a real din. Now, of course, we know how we paskin. The dina, we paskin that we are not allowed to eat chicken with milk at all. We treat them exactly the same as we would meat. We make no distinctions in regards to waiting however long we wait, going into the 6th hour, going into the 3rd hour. If you're Dutch, waiting 1 hour, which is a din in the Raman, Shulchan Aruch, and Hilchos Basar B'chalav. That's how Levi answered up Rebbe. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Yerachas Haisa Be'eretz Yisrael. There was a city in the land of Israel, Shayu Osen Rabbi Eliezer, and they followed the lenient shita of Rabbi Eliezer. One of two things: either like the first part of our Mishnah, that he would cut the wood to make the coals to make the izemel, the knife for bris milah, or like the second case of the Mishnah, that what was the case that the first case was that you can carry the knife for Shabbos, and the second case was that you can cut the wood. Either way, the hayu mason bismanam, they lived out full lives. Haraya, the Rabbi Eliezer shita was acceptable. At one point in their neighborhood where Rabbi Eliezer lived, Gazra Malchus Harasha Shmad Al Yisrael Al Hamila. That at one point, as has happened many times in history, there was a nation that forbade the Jewish people to have bris milah Al Yisrael Al Hamila. The Al Oso Ha'ir, in that city where people follow the shitas of Rabbi Eliezer, Lo Gazra. That's a very powerful idea. We follow our Rabbeim. We follow the shita of our Rabbeim. If we have a Rebbe who paskins one way, it could be a big kula. We follow our Rabbeim. As the Gemara says elsewhere, koch tehetera adif. When you follow a kula, not because you're shopping for a kula, when you follow a kula, because that's what your Rebbe said. Mutter v'mutter. The Rabbi of Yosef Tov Halevi Soloveitchik held that making tea on Shabbos was mutter b'kli sheni, because he held it wasn't kali abishal. He held it was tavlin mamish. It was like a spice. It's like putting salt on cholent. No problem at all. That's mutter, even if salt is not boiled or cooked. So that's what the Rav held. that's a big kula. You have to follow his chumras too. You can't just go shopping. But again, koch the Tera Adif, and in the city of Rabbi Eliezer, they all followed Rabbi Eliezer, and they were not punished. They all were yatsa ladina, because the oraisa pashut, it's the case that having chicken and milk is not problematic, and midirabanan Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi Aglibi had psukim to support. Okay, let's continue. 2/3 of the way down, Kuflam and Amadal Tanya. Rashbag Omer, Kol Mitzvah Shekiblu Alem Besimcha Kigon Mila Dechsiv Sasan Anochi Ali Marsecha Kamotze Shalal Rab. Any mitzvah that the Jewish people accepted upon themselves with happiness, like they did with Bris Milah, that's going to last through the generations. Adayin Osin Osa Besimcha. Baruch Hashem, a true fact. The far majority of Jews who know that they're Jews do Bris Milah Be'ito Bismano very closely. Right? There's obviously some who are opposed. I had a phone call yesterday or today with a family where the mother wants to do the bris in the hospital on day 2. The father's pushing to have a bris, a be'ito bismano on day 8, and he was trying to get me to give him some talking points with his wife. And his language was, I need some bullets for the gun, which I hope was a metaphor. He wanted to just try to argue a svara to get, so I told him all the pluses and pros and cons. But by and large, Yidden today, non from Yidden as well, they're doing bris milah, and that's this Gemara. If when Klal Yisrael did something, when it was difficult, and they did it b'simcha, it became part of our DNA. But the opposite is also true. Anything that the Jewish people accepted upon themselves with difficulty, kigon arayos, the restrictions on arayos. They were crying about family matters that they couldn't be with their family members. Al iske mishpechosav adayin osen osabik tata. This is still something that people struggle with, and we know today that arayos is rampant. It's very complicated. It's a difficult world to live in right now in this regard. And as the Gemara says, there's like a catchphrase: "The leka ksuba delo ramu batigra." There's almost not a ksuba in the world where there's no challenge, where there's no difficulty. Tanya, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Kol mitzvah shemasur Yisrael atzman aleim lemisa b'shas hashmad. Any mitzvah that the Jewish people were willing to forego their lives in order to uphold, kigon avodah zara umila, adayin hi muchzekes biyadam, that will still be upheld by them. Beautiful, powerful idea. Kol mitzvah shelo masur Yisrael atzman aleim lemisa b'shas hashmad, kigon tefillin. During Shas Hashmad, when the Jewish people were not willing to be Moser Nefesh on that, Adayin hi merufa biyadam, that's still going to be very weak in their hands. The Amar Rabbi Yanai, Tefillin tzrichin gufnaki, ki alisha bal kanafayim. This is a Gemara we already saw about alisha bal kanafayim. We're going to see the full Gemara here again. That gufnaki was something that we have a din like that a person has to be careful about passing gas with tefillin on, as we will soon see. But that was something that you look around. Look around now. There's plenty of Jews who don't put on tefillin. Hashem Yerachim, they should put on tefillin. It's a mitzvah d'oraisa. There's plenty of people who don't put on tefillin, but most Jews do get bris milah. So that's this Gemara for one of two reasons, either because of Mesiras Nefesh or because they did it b'simcha, whichever way. So the Gemara now says, what is the gufnaki? That's a machlokas amoraim Rabbi shelo yafiach behen, the restriction of passing gas with tefillin on. Rav Amar shelo yishan behen, that you should not be yash, you should not sleep in them, according to some, because you may pass gas in them, or because of Hesach Hadas, whichever the svara. V'amai karulo Alisha Baal Kanafayim. Why did they call Alisha Baal Kanafayim, the one of the wings? Because Shepamachas Gazra Malchus HaRosh Shmad Al Yisrael Shekol Maniach Tefillin Al Rosh Yigras Mocho. At one particular time, there was a government that forbade the Jews from putting on tefillin, and if not, they would have their brains removed from their heads. But Elisha went out in public. He was wearing his tefillin, and one of the guards, one of the policemen, saw him. Ratz milafanav. Elisha started running. The ratz acharav, and the guard started running right after him. When the guard got over to him, Elisha had taken off his tefillin, and he put them in his hands. Amarle, the guard said to Elisha, Ma biyadcha, show me what's in your hands, empty your pockets. Amarlo, kanfei Yona. It's going to be the wings of a dove. Pashades yado, v'nimtzu ba kanfei Yona, a nace occurred, and he opened his hands, and birds flew out of his hands. Lafichach, therefore, hayukorin oso bal kanafayim, that's why they called him the one of the wings. Ma'ishna kanfei Yona da amarle, below amarle sha'ar ophos. Why did Elisha decide to pick this bird and not any other bird? Answers the Gemara, Mishum de Damya Knesset Yisrael Yona Shne'emar, as the pasuk says, Kanfei Yona nechpab vakesef ve'evroseha birak rak charutz. And what does that pasuk teach us? That the Jewish people protect themselves with the wings. Ma Yona zo, just like this bird, kanafeh maginos aleha, that they would use their wings to poke their enemy, which not all birds do. Af Yisrael Mitzvos magino saleh, and so too the Jewish people. When the Yetzer Hara comes up and he says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem, this person's doing averos, the mitzvos poke and say, wait, hold on, no, we're doing good things too. That's what the Yonah does. So that's why he picked this in order to be representative of the Jewish people. 2 lines from the bottom, Kuf Lamed Amud Aleph. Let us continue in the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Abba bar Rav Ada bar Yitzchak. Pamachas shachachu v'lo heviu izemel me'erev Shabbos v'heviyuhu b'Shabbos. Once the Moel forgot the knife on Erev Shabbos and they brought it on Shabbos, but how did they bring it? Says the Gemara in the brackets at the bottom, derech gagos v'derech chatzeros. They went on roofs of houses. If you've ever been in the old city, there's like a whole pathway to walk on top of the house, on top of the houses there. Right above, there's like a shuk, like in the Arab quarter there. You mamish could look down in there from the top of the roofs. I've walked on it myself. So that's what people would do. They would walk derech gagos v'derech chatzeros. Shelo beratzon Rabbi Eliezer. Now, what did we just say about Rabbi Eliezer? He was matir basically everything. So what do you mean that Rabbi Eliezer was not okay with them walking on the gagos and chatzeros for the knife? Makes no sense. Asks the Gemara. Maskif lo Rav Yosef shelo beratzon Rabbi Eliezer adarabba. Rabbi Eliezer hu deshari. He was the one who was most lenient. So what do you mean when you say that they took the knife that they forgot to bring before Shabbos? They were walking on the roofs and through chatzeros, and it wasn't like Rabbi. It doesn't make sense. You must have gotten the language wrong. Of course, maybe the language was wrong. We didn't mean to say not like Rabbi Eliezer, but rather what did we mean to say? Ella biratzon Rabbanan, like the Rabbanan. So let's repeat the case now. The Moel forgot to bring the knife before Shabbos, and then he started carrying it across the gagos and chatzeros like the Rabbanan. So says the Gemara, Ella biratzon Rabbanan. The Asru derech Rishus Harabim v'sharu derech gagos derech chatzeros v'karfetios. Good. That's a nice approach. That fits nicely. That maybe the Rabbanan did allow it. Says the Gemara, Umi Shari. Even the Rabbanan wouldn't have allowed that. V'atanya kishem she'ein mivino so derech Rishus Harabim. Just like the Rabbanan would not allow to carry a knife like through the Rishus Harabim. Kach ein mivino so lo derech gagos v'lo derech karfetios v'lo derech chatzeros. So too, even the Rabbanan would not allow to carry that on the roofs and through the chatzeros. So therefore, we're back to square one. We don't know what this statement on the bottom of Kuf Lamed Amud Aleph was in the name of Rav Abba, in the name of Rav Ada, in the name of Rav Yitzchak. Again, the case. I forgot the knife. I'm carrying it on Shabbos, and I carried it through gagos and chatzeros. Who is it like? It wasn't like Rabbi Eliezer. He's matir everything. It wasn't like the Rabban, and they forbid everything. So who was it like? So says the Gemara, it must be Ella Amar Rav Ashi. 8 lines down, Kuf Lamed Amud Beis, Shelo beratzon Rabbi Eliezer umachlukaso. No, this line was not like either of the Shitas. It wasn't like Rabbi Eliezer who's matir even in Rishus Harabim, and it wasn't like the Rabbanan who don't allow even derech chatzeros v'karfetios v'gagos. What must it have been? Ela beratzon Reb Shimon. A third Shita in the Tanaim. So we have Rabbi Eliezer who's lenient on everything. We have the Rabbanan who are strict on everything. And now we have our Shvil Hazav. Rabbi Shimon says that's not. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Echad gagos, v'echad karfetios, v'echad chatzeros, Kulan Rishus Echad Hein Lekalim Sheshavsu B'Sochan. As long as there was a kli in that space that was already shavas, you planned to use it on Shabbos. You knew you needed a knife. You just left it at home. So then mutter. Below Lekalim Sheshavsu B'Sochan Bais, but you can't bring them from inside the house. It has to be outside. You can't bring from the house to the chutzner to the gagos. That's not allowed, even according to Reb Shimon. It had to be outside, but in a relatively protected place. That is what the Gemara concludes. So again, this line on the bottom is not like Rabbi Eliezer. It's not like the Rabbanan, but rather like the middle Shita of Reb Shimon. This brings us, we're not done yet. So let's, yeah, we are. This brings us to the 1 dot I have here. About 1/3 of the way down, Kuf Lamed Amud Beis. Ba'amine Rabbi Zera me Rabasi. Let's talk about a mavui. Now, for those of you who remember, if you looked at the picture of how people lived, they had houses. Let's say there was a very large rectangular shape. They had houses in the outermost part, making a bit of a C shape or a ches. A little bit in front of them, they had these small chatzeros also. And then here in the middle was the mavui space. So that's what we're dealing with, is the space in the middle called the mavui. Let's go back in our Gemara. It says the Gemara as follows. A mavui, and where you forgot to do a ruve chatzeros. Take a look at Rashi. Just to the left, about a centimeter down. You forgot to make an eruv in that spot. So here's our question: are you allowed to carry only within the mavui space, not transferring of the mavui to the surrounding chatzer or houses, but just within the mavui itself, from the beginning of the mavui to end. Mi amrinan, do we say kechatzer dami, that this space, the mavui in the middle, is just like a chatzer? What would the similarities be there? Machatzer afal gav delo irvu muter letaltel bekulo. Just like in your own chatzer, if you forgot to make an eruv to your neighbor's chatzer, but you can still carry within your own yard. Afal gav delo irvu muter letaltel bekulo. Hi nami, this mavui also afal gav delo nishtatfu bo muter letaltel bekulo. Maybe we could say that it's equivalent. That maybe the mavui is just like the chatzer. O dilma, or perhaps, and this would be a very obvious distinction for us to have thought of. Maybe we would say, "Afal gav de lo nishtatfu bo o dilma." Perhaps lo dami lachatzer. Maybe the mavui is not like a chatzer. What would be the differences between a mavui and a chatzer? The chatzer islay daled mechitzos. My backyard has 4 walls. Hi, but the mavui, no. Less lay daled mechitzos. A mavui is always open at one end because you got to get in, you got to get out. So there's only 3 walls. Inami, another reason to make a distinction between a mavui and a chatzer is, Inami, chatzer islay diurin. In a chatzer, people live there. I'm in my backyard every Shabbos. Hi, less beit diurin. But nobody lives inside a mavui. That's just a public place to live. So do we say the mavui is similar to the chatzer? Or do we say the mavui is not similar to the chatzer? The answer is the Gemara. This question was posed to Rav Asi. Shasik velo amrle velo midi. He did not answer the question. Left him hanging. Says the Gemara, another story. Zimnin at another time, Ashkeche, the Yasi v'ka'amar, Rav Asi was sitting and teaching Torah, and here's what he said. Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish mishum Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Story. Pamachas shachachu velo heviu izen on the Erev Shabbos. Another time, Amoel forgot to bring his knife on Erev Shabbos. Heviu b'Shabbos, and he brought it on Shabbos. By a davar kasha the Chachamim. I don't understand. We paskin like the Chachamim, and you're holding like Rabbi Eliezer that you're allowed to carry the knife. If you forgot the knife, it's too bad. You have to push off the bris. We don't allow to carry a knife through a makom iser. Hey, achmanichin divrei Chachamim v'osin k'Rabbi Eliezer. How is it that you forego the shita that we hold like? It's Chachamim. It's halacha yachid v'rabim, halacha kirabim. So how can you hold like Rabbi Eliezer? Chada the Rabbi Eliezer shamutihi. First of all, Rabbi Eliezer was a shammai-nik. He held like Beis Shammai. We don't hold like him at all. No matter how you hold about Rabbi Eliezer, even if you don't mind that he was a shammai-nik, but he's still one person against the Chachamim. So we paskin like the Chachamim. So how in that story can you tell me that it's okay that he carried in the knife? It doesn't make any sense. Answers the Gemara, or I should say the question really continues. I need to change my license plate. Rabbi Yehuda was a Moab. His name was Rabbi Yehuda HaGozer. Rabbi Yehuda the Cutter. There's a Moab who I know his license plate says Moab. It's very gentle. This is a much more aggressive title. I got to change my website. That's probably a better idea. But Omar Lee, and he said, where did he carry it from in this case that we said he followed like Rabbi Eliezer? It was in a mavui. That was our case. And he brought it from apartment number 1 outside in the mavui, opposite apartment 1 to the last apartment in the mavui. So says the Gemara, Omar Le, Svirle Lamar, do you hold mavui shalom nishtatu mutter letaltel bekulo? That was the question we started with. Do you hold that you can move something in a mavui from the beginning of the mavui to the end? You answered me before, you didn't answer me at all. And now you're saying that it's mutar amalei. Yes, I taka hold that way. Well, if you hold that way, when I asked you a week ago, 2 weeks ago, you didn't tell me an answer. Why didn't you tell me? Dilma, perhaps, agav, shitfach, rahit, loch gamrach. Maybe you were lost in the sugya that you were learning and you weren't really focused on my shaila about whether or not a mavui is treated like a chatzar or not. That the Gemara Amalei, you're right. I was lost in the sugya. Agav shitfa rahita. I was lost in the sugya. I was running in my sugya. Right in Aramaic means to run. Shitali gamri, and I was totally absorbed in my learning. You asked me, and I didn't have the headspace. I didn't answer you. Shasik v'lo amar leiv I didn't answer you. If we were to stop right here, the dina, the halacha would be that we do paskin like the chachamim. That if the moel forgets his knife and it's a makom isra to carry, you're not allowed to carry. If I forgot a kli at home here in Chicago, I could carry. Mutter, we have an eruv. Okay, maybe even in the Carmelites, we have to see where the machlokas or Elazar and the Chachamim is. Is it a Rishus HaRabim? Is it a Carmelis? Where can you carry? Where can you not? But in this case, the Gemara says that if it was a mavui, that middle space that's quasi-public, 3 walls, not 4, a place that's less beit diur, nobody lives there, Says the Gemara, that doesn't mean that we were following Rabbi Eliezer. Maybe it was even like the Chachamim, but it's mutter to carry in a mavui even when there's no chatzar. We'll stop here for tonight. We'll pick up at Itmar tomorrow night on Daf Kuf Lamed Aleph. Wishing you all a beautiful night.